It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me is Vice Admiral Sean Buck. He became the 63rd Superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy on July 26, 2019. Welcome back to Annapolis, sir.
Good morning, Donna. It's good to be home.
You actually are just back from Philadelphia.
I am.
Yeah. So
in a really good mood.
In a really good mood. And where's the trophy?
It is over in Bancroft Hall right now in the hands of some really skilled artisans to polish it up, repair it, make it look good so that we can proudly display it for the next 5 years. 31-7.
That's quite the game, huh?
It was decisive. And it needed to be decisive.
So, the President Trump came to the game. There were some photos of you with the president. It looks like he was speaking. You were listening?
It was an awesome conversation. He was all about Navy football, all about military sports, enjoyed the atmosphere. He said he felt the passion in the stands there. We placed him, if you saw, right in the heart of the brigade of midshipmen to watch the game from.
I did. That's got to be special for you as your first year as superintendent, yeah?
It was very special. A real honor to have my entire chain of command was in the link.
And he has now paved the way for athletes to defer their service if they're chosen to play professionally.
He has, and he made that official public statement in both locker rooms, Armies and Navies, prior to the game, is where he formally said what would be in his executive order.
You drove up today with a driver in a van with some other people with you. I'm kind of disappointed you did not drive up in a classic Mustang.
Well, I had real fun with that classic Mustang. I paid my just dues with a football game bet that I made with 3 young fourth-class midshipmen on a game about 4 weeks ago, and they won the bet. And if they won, the deal was they got to drive my Mustang around the yard, and that's what we did yesterday. So I had her out on that sunny day, and those young men received their just due from winning the bet.
They must have loved that.
They loved it.
And what year is this Mustang?
It's a 1968.
However, according to FordMuscle.com, here's a website that I often go to, not really. This is the quote from you. "I've always had affinity with classic Fords," you said, "and I would love to have a 1965 convertible, desert gold, with a white soft top one day." Sir, you are the superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy. That's pretty prestigious. You're at a point in your career where you should be able to find this car. Where the heck is it?
I've asked Santa for it.
So it's on the list.
I have 2 children, and the kids are very interested as to who is going to gain ownership of one Mustang. So I've realized that the solution will be to be the proud owner of 2 one of these days.
2 Mustangs. Have you been to Cars and Coffee in Annapolis yet? Downtown?
Not yet.
Okay,
football season has precluded me and kept me pretty busy.
So every Sunday, you know that there is a Cars and Coffee for your type of people, right?
I will be there.
Showing one of these cars?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I only have one of these cars now.
But on the list when Santa delivers this car.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Moving on, you took over the helm of the U.S. Naval Academy. I'm not sure there's not a precarious time to take over the helm of a U.S. Naval Academy. There's always something going on. There's sea level rise, which perhaps is the most dire of all these issues. There was quite a few accidents out at sea with Navy ships. There have been issues with sexual harassment and assaults. There are issues with the aging infrastructure at the Academy. Where do you want to start in this interview?
Wherever you'd like to. And those are issues, but there are also opportunities to make the Naval Academy better.
So, all right, speaking of the USS Fitzgerald and the USS John S. McCain, 2017, I don't need to remind you what happened, but for the listeners, both were involved in deadly accidents. According to the UT National Transportation Safety Board and Navy findings, both had issues related to unprepared crew, lack of preparation, ineffective command and control, deficiencies in training and preparations for navigation. With the McCain, that was the Fitzgerald. The McCain leadership failed to provide effective oversight in bridge operating procedures, crew training, and fatigue mitigation. Being on a ship you're no stranger to. You, by the way, and I don't need to tell you, you were a flight officer but you spent a lot of time on ships, and you're now leading people that will be.
You bet. Donna, I just spent the last 3 years commanding the United States 4th Fleet, headquartered in Mayport, Florida, a very surface-intensive fleet with surface operations all throughout the South Atlantic and the South Pacific. The Navy, in its comprehensive review, a very, very formal and deep dive into those accidents, came up and identified all those things that you just mentioned. Those are accurate. Those are talked about in that comprehensive review. And the bottom line is, and what I get to oversee right now, is the Navy has a need to go back into being brilliant in the basics in seamanship, navigation, and those basic mariner skills that we realized may have atrophied, may have not been trained as intensely as we needed to be. And I'm very proud to tell you that since those accidents, the Navy took a very, very hard round turn on all of that training. And I'm very, very happy with how we're training our sailors these days that go to sea on ships.
Have we become too reliant on electronics?
No, not at all.
Okay.
We are using electronics to the most effective way, the way we need to. We just need to train to it, give good proficiency, but that's the direction we need to be headed.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me is Vice Admiral Sean Buck, the 63rd Superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy. We're talking about all these issues that are either Navy-wide or beyond the Navy, including, let's talk about sea level rise and protection of assets at the U.S. Naval Academy and downriver in the city of Annapolis.
You bet.
What's on the agenda with that?
Well, if I may, the high tide flooding at the Naval Academy is a reality. I had read about it, I had heard about it, but until I arrived in Annapolis and in the yard, I didn't really know too much about its prevalence. I've now witnessed it and experienced it 3 times. It's personal to me. My mother and father are buried in the yard in the columbarium at the Naval Academy Cemetery. And it's been my habit since arriving here to go visit my parents' gravesite on Saturday mornings. And there's been 3 times in which I've had great difficulty getting to their gravesite because of the high tide flooding. Couldn't get my car there, couldn't ride a bike there, and if I had had to walk in, I would have walked in waders. So it's a reality. The sky is not falling. This is not dire. We can take a very deliberate approach to this over the next 20 to 30 years. It needs to begin now to mitigate it. There's some very sound engineering solutions that we can take to make sure that we not only protect the Naval Academy, but we're doing this in concert with the city of Annapolis to make sure that we cover and protect the whole area, because we're one and the same. Mm-hmm. We're neighbors, and we don't want to do anything at the Naval Academy that would worsen it in Annapolis, and vice versa. We don't want the city of Annapolis to do something that would cause more flooding on the yard. So we're working together, along with the state of Maryland's been very helpful, and the Army Corps of Engineers.
This money that will be coming from the federal government to help with some of this, you've had issues in recent history with an aging infrastructure at the Academy. And part of the problem, I think, has been put on money that hasn't come. How does that get addressed?
The budgets, the operating budgets, and the infrastructure budgets to sustain, maintain, and modernize the Naval Academy's structures has been relatively flat the last 10 years. And then if you'll look back in that 10-year period, we also had sequestration in the federal budget. And that has kind of caused us to mortgage the infrastructure sustainment and modernization, and we need to begin to address that. So it's going to be a real balancing act. I need monies from the federal government to both get after sea level rise and the high tide flooding issue, very deliberately, but I also need those monies to work on some of the historic infrastructure that needs some tender loving care.
On the to-do list, huh?
On the to-do list, and we need to do both. It's not one or the other, it's both. And I believe the Naval Academy team can get after both and keep them both high on the priority list.
So the high school class of 2020, I don't know if you've thought about this. They've only known a country at war. What are your thoughts about those students as they reach you in the next I-Day and the Navy's role in the war on terror going forward?
Well, those young men and women that have been signing up to join the military and come to the academy post 9/11, we all need to remember they voluntarily did that to become part of something much bigger than themselves. I'm very proud of them, and I've been with them out in the fleet, and now I'm seeing them matriculate to the Naval Academy. They are a wonderful group of people. We continue to get some really, really strong young men and women that are joining our military, not just the Navy, not just the Naval Academy, but our military writ large are really, really good generation coming up. Still have a strong passion to serve.
Regarding this ongoing war on terror and all the issues that we as a country face around the world, I am under the understanding that you are considering and rooting for a new major at the U.S. Naval Academy called Regional Studies.
Right.
Is that true?
That is a true statement. Working very closely with the academic dean, Andy Phillips, in looking at how we add to what we offer the young midshipmen to study so that we can pace or outpace our adversaries, and also produce a young man or woman, a graduate that is more steeped and confident in working in the culture of our partner nations that we'll fight with and serve with out there. Being out in the fleet, I have been immersed in working with partners and allies as we will fight moving into the future. And I realized how important it is for these young men and women to have a better cultural appreciation of other folks, understanding their customs, their traditions, their language, and their rules of engagement, so the first time that they're discovering this is not the day they need to pull a trigger in a fight together. So very, very impressed with the Naval Academy. Our International Programs Office has a wonderful program. Academically, I want to add to that with a regional studies major.
Understanding the anthropological, or as you said, cultural awareness of those that are not us, that we may end up with, either as our allies or fighting against. It's
exactly.
Huge.
Yes,
yeah.
And that's the flip side of that. You need to understand the culture of your adversary also.
We're going to take another short break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is Vice Admiral Sean Buck. He's the Superintendent of the U.S. Naval Academy. Sexual assaults at American military academies have gone up. Not just sexual assaults, but also sexual harassment cases have gone up at all three military academies. Naval Academy had 32 reports of sexual assaults in the 2017-18 school year, and Nixon Kigo, midshipman, has been charged with breaking into a dorm room of female midshipmen, sexually assaulting them or attempting to while they slept. He's been charged with sexual assault, attempted sexual assault, burglary, obstruction of justice in relation to 4 incidents, 3 last year and 1 this year, all before you started, sir. While you all knew about some of this, it took nearly a year to investigate and bring charges against Kigo, during which time he was allowed to attend classes and, according to charging documents, commit another assault. This last part, according to an editorial in the Baltimore Sun. Is there a problem with NCIS? Why did it take so long?
Well, if I may, this is an ongoing court case with the particular midshipman that you mentioned, so it's best that I don't comment on any aspect of that.
Okay. In general, is NCIS acting quickly enough regarding these sexual assault cases?
Absolutely. I don't know whether you appreciate what my background is, but as a flag officer, as an admiral in the Navy, I was the U.S. Navy's sexual assault prevention and response officer for the entire Navy, appointed back in 2013 for just short of a 2-year tour of duty. I was working extremely closely with NCIS for this problem, Navy writ large, which as a subset was the U.S. Naval Academy as our services academy. And I will tell you, I'm very proud, very impressed of the NCIS aspect of investigations. At the beginning, back in 2013, the system was overwhelmed with the number of reports that came forward. But what I'd love for your audience to appreciate is we in the military, and I think just we as human beings, as citizens, reporting is good. Reporting means that victims of sexual assault feel confident that their leadership will help them and will do something about it instead of brushing it under the carpet. Well, as the number of reports increased, They all needed to be investigated. NCIS was of a certain size with a certain number of investigators and agents. They initially got overwhelmed with the magnitude of reporting, which we were encouraged by, that people came forward for help and we could hold perpetrators accountable. Now all of that has leveled out. NCIS has the capacity and the capability, and they do a great job. It's a very difficult thing to investigate. So if there's any complaints out there about the pace and the knowledge, we have to work within the rules of the judicial system. The investigators have to stay within the rules of their investigating parameters to make sure that they do a good job. You know, if you want it bad, you get it bad. If you want it good and thorough to truly be able to hold the perpetrator accountable, you take your time and you're deliberate about that.
So you want a thorough investigation, and
Absolutely.
sometimes it takes a year?
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. Very difficult crime to investigate.
With regard to things like sexual assault, sexual harassment, even PTSD, is there some effort by the U.S. Navy? And I've heard the statistics with colleges, and I have a daughter getting ready to go off to a college, so this is why I'm tuned into this, that most of the sexual assaults take place within the first few months on campus with new students. I don't know if that's the same with the U.S. Naval Academy.
Statistically, I know that to be true. At other universities, I'm looking at our statistics at the Naval Academy. I can't tell you whether that's necessarily true. I would suggest more that it's just a young cohort of people, anywhere in that main cohort of 18 to 22.
Right.
I wouldn't think that it's just targeted to freshmen or sophomores. I think it's across the board.
I guess what I'm asking is there some sort of training right from the bat as...
Absolutely. I can only speak for the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
Very impressed with our sexual assault and sexual harassment prevention education program. It is a continuum across all 4 years with a very sharp focus as soon as the young plebes enter for their plebe summer.
All right. PTSD, we've learned a lot about that in recent history. Is the Naval Academy doing anything to train the future officers, Marines and Navy officers, on what it looks like, not just for them, but for those that they might be leading?
Yes, we do. A little bit. Not a huge dwell on that. What we want to teach them at first, though, is to teach them how to protect themselves and to be more resilient, to have some grit, to learn how and appreciate that it's okay to ask for help. That is not what it was like in the military that I joined 40 years ago. PTSD or any type of mental anguish or mental health distractions would have probably seen me exit the military. Mm-hmm. Now the military and our Navy is doing a wonderful job of addressing it, treating it, and getting you back in the game. We want you back in the game. We don't want you out of our Navy. We have the Midshipmen Development Center at the Naval Academy, something that didn't exist when I attended here back in the early 80s. Midshipmen are encouraged to come forward as they try to navigate through the stresses of college, military life, a very difficult academic curriculum, being away from home, and anything else that may cause stress in their lives. If I can teach a young leader to be resilient and protect themselves, they'll be much better at addressing that in their sailors or their Marines that they lead when they get out of here.
And the dogs coming in for final exams, have you seen that yet?
I have, and that will no longer be taking place at the Naval Academy under my watch.
Why?
I don't think I need to have that to toughen up these young kids. And I'd like the dogs maybe on the weekends. I love the whole program of service dogs. I understand why they're there, but I don't have them there for midshipmen.
Well, sir, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me today.
You bet. It was a real pleasure and an honor to meet you and to be on the show, and I look forward to the next 4 years.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We'll see you next week.